So we're continuing our journey on Rathayatra, and it's a beautiful journey. Yes, this is one of the most beautiful festivals in the Vaishnava calendar, and it has such a deep meaning, and that's what we're kind of exploring this weekend. And just to recap, we began yesterday by talking about our own journey in life and how it's very, very interesting, because sometimes there are visible events, things that are going on, and we're not quite sure what the deeper significance is. They just seem like things that happen in our life. But what really happens is that there are deep invisible purposes underneath everything that happens. So stay awake, stay aware, because in life so many things are happening day to day, and if we're introspective and if we're reflective, then we'll see that actually Krishna's hand is there. Krishna says in the Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridese arjuna tistati. Krishna says, I'm seated within the hearts of all living entities and I'm guiding everything that's going on. So sometimes we think, oh yeah, I'm making decisions, I'm doing things, I'm arranging things, but behind it is Krishna. And it's very, very wonderful when we can reflect on our life and see how Krishna is there, because it makes Krishna consciousness real. See, this movement is not just about believing in Krishna, but it's about fine-tuning our consciousness in such a way that we can perceive Krishna's hand. Yes, Krishna is there. Krishna is attentive, awake, alert, and affectionate to us. So then we go on to talk about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when we look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita in this light, Hare Krishna, we're not just looking at a chronology of events. Yes, there are a chronology of events in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mahaprabhu goes to different places and he does different things, and he has beautiful interactions, and there are stories and there are kirtans and there's a lot of prasadam, and there are amazing interactions which go on, but underneath it is something is happening in Mahaprabhu's mission. And therefore, let us, when we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita or any book, whether it be the CC, the Ramayana, the Gita, beyond the dialogue and underneath the dialogue, let us see what's going on conceptually on a deeper level. So we took this whole model of how there are visible events and sometimes invisible purposes, and we decided to look at the Rathayatra through that lens. Before Rathayatra can happen, certain other things have to happen in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and specifically these three things. There has to be Yatra. All the devotees from Bengal have to first come, because without the Vaishnavas, there's no festival. You can have all the carts, all the decorations, all the arrangements, but if the devotees are not there, it doesn't work. Therefore, yes, there must be devotees. And then today we're going to learn about what happens when the devotees come to Jagannath Puri, and what's the first thing they do when they get together, and then what do they do just before the Rathayatra takes place, and then this will allow Rathayatra to happen. So remember, Srila Prabhupada said Rathayatra is a great ecstasy, it's a big ecstasy, but only the advanced devotees can experience it. Therefore, we have to go through these things. So yesterday we talked about Yatra. We discussed this beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam talking about why and how sadhu sanga is so powerful. And then we took some time just to reflect on what it actually means to have real association, real relationship, real bonding. A community is not just made up by the buildings. A community is not just made up by even the achievements. A community is not even built up by the individual power of each devotee, but a real community is the love that is expressed between the individuals there. And where that is present, then Krishna's blessings will descend in copious amounts. And so we just stopped to reflect, because this kind of reflection, if it was just left up to us, we would never do it. Therefore, sometimes we have to sit down and deeply think, in every single relationship I have, what is one thing I can do to become less selfish and more selfless? And when you start going on that trajectory, you begin to see how your relationships transform. So we spent some time looking at this. So today we're going to continue on. All the devotees from Bengal have arrived in Jagannath Puri. Remember, it was an incredible sight because when Prachaparudra, he had seen so many kirtan parties. It's not that he had not seen kirtan parties. Puri was full of them. But when the devotees came in and done their kirtan and arrived together in such a beautiful community, it immediately caught his attraction, it caught his eye. And he said, I've never seen anything like this. And remember Bhattacharya's response, Bhattacharya kohe e madhura vachan, chaitanya shrishti e prem sankirtan. This is a very sweet sound you are hearing, because this is not a creation of this world. Because these devotees are so absorbed in love for Mahaprabhu, and because they have such love amongst themselves, E Prem Sankirtan, this is the chanting of Krishna's names in pure love. And therefore, for sure, you have not seen anything like this. So they all arrived. And of course, when you arrive, the first thing that happens, what's the first thing they do when you arrive to a place, a home or a retreat? You get a bill? No, you get prasadam. That's the first thing, right? You invite the people. Prasadam comes first. Yeah? You have traveled such a long distance. You please refresh yourself, take bath and take prasadam. So that's what they did. And they got together and had beautiful talks. But very, very quickly, after they had taken prasadam and they had refreshed themselves, very, very quickly something happened. And what happened is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, okay, everyone together, now let us go in the 4 directions and let us do kirtan, let us do sankirtan. And therefore, the first thing that happened when all the Bengali Vaishnavas had come and taken prasadam, the next thing that happened is that they all went in different directions and they started to do sankirtan. This is also very significant because it shows devotees coming together isn't just about taking prasadam and having a nice exchange. Of course, that is there. But when devotees come together, they inspire each other to go deeper into spiritual life. This is the effect, the real effect of sadhu sanga. If you're associating with devotees or if you have an interaction with a devotee, but you don't go away from that interaction feeling more inclined, more inspired to actually deeply engage in spiritual life, then you haven't really had association. Because association means the next thing is bhajana kriya, that after associating, you want to do something for Krishna. And so the first thing that happened is that they went into all the 4 directions. He said that every single kirtan party was very organized. Ashta mridanga batri shakar tal. There were 8 mridanga players. I think here we've got 3. Getting there. 8 mridanga players in each kirtan party and 32 kartal players, and then there was 1 devotee who was assigned to be the main dancer. And in this way, every single kirtan party was very, very organized, and every single kirtan party was strategically placed in different regions around the Puri area. And it said, Pratidine, they began to do this every single day. In the run-up to Rathayatra, they were going out on sankirtan every single day. And then it's explained that as they were doing the kirtan, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was 1, but the kirtan parties were 4. But not to worry, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expanded 1 into 4 and he appeared in every single kirtan party. And you can imagine when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, then the kirtan just went to another level. And as the intensity of each of these 4 kirtans were arising more and more and more, then it said that the sound of the kirtan penetrated the coverings of the universe, and in that way it was a tumultuous, resounding kirtan that were reaching the far depths of the universe, intensely ecstatic. So this is basically giving us an insight. Now if we look closely, remember when we're hearing about the pastimes, we're not just hearing about events. There are very, very deep lessons to learn. We can learn deep lessons here. First thing is, every single kirtan party was organized. That means your spiritual practice should be organized, should be very, very methodical, very, very systematic, because this is serious business. It's not that just like, yes, I will read the books, I will improve my chanting, yes, I will to make more commitments. No, it should be very clear, it should be very defined, it should be very systematic, as we said. And so when we hear of the Beda Kirtan being so organized, then we can remember, yes, that means also our spiritual, we should have a vision. How many of us have a vision when I will finish all of Srila Prabhupada's books? We should have a plan. If we ask you, when do you plan to finish the Bhagavatam? Yeah, someday I will finish. Someday is good, but that's not one of the days of the week. One of the days of the week is Monday, Tuesday, which day? Someday. No, which day? Thursday? Yes, we should have a plan. I've been showing devotees as I go around that, there's an app called Become a Sage, page by page. So it's very, very good. It's a free app. I'm not a sales representative or anything. But let's have a go. Okay, let's ask Mayur, when would you like to, how long would you like to finish the Bhagavatam in? 1 month? 1 year? 1 year. That's reasonable, isn't it? 1 year. 1 year, okay, you want to finish the Bhagavatam in 1 year? You know how many pages you have to read every single day? 9? I'm not sure which Bhagavatam you're reading. 9 pages every day to finish the Bhagavatam. 97, 16, 41. That's achievable. It's 41 pages a day. What's that? Half of it is anyway synonyms. You don't have to read that. You can, you should also read. But even if you don't, it's so less, no? 41. But pratidine dine, you have to do it every single day. So we have to take it seriously. Just like you plan your material life, you plan your studies, you plan your finances, you plan your marriage, you plan so many things. We should plan our spiritual life. We should have an organized system of how it's going to happen. Otherwise, time goes by and life goes by. And then we look back and we think, I didn't utilize my time. I could have done more. So when we're hearing the Beda Kirtan, then we're thinking, yes, I should be organized. I should be regulated. I should do it every single day. When we're hearing the Beda Kirtan, we're hearing of the intensity of the Kirtan, and then we're realizing, yes, we must be intense. Does anyone know here why the Beda Kirtan just before Yatra, why there was an extra intensity? There was one reason. Why there was an extra intensity in the Kirtan in the run-up to Rathayatra, because something had happened, or something happens every year. Can anyone think what that is? Something happens every year before Rathayatra which causes the Kirtan in that time to attain a higher level of intensity. That comes after, but what happens before that? Yatra. After the Lord is bathed, 2 weeks before Jagannath Rath Yatra, the Lord is bathed, isn't it? In Birmingham, you know well. And what happens after Yatra? The Lord falls sick, and the Lord goes into seclusion. And therefore, in that period, in the 2 weeks before Rath Yatra, the devotees cannot see Jagannath. They are always praying, isn't it? Jagannatha Swami Nayana Katagami Bhavatu Me. Lord, please be visible to my eyes. But in those days, the devotees cannot see Jagannath because Jagannath is in seclusion. And therefore there's an extra separation, there's an extra intensity. You see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he's in Puri and after the Snana Yatra, it's too much for him, therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to a place called Alalnath. And there in Alalnath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, there's a deity of Narayan there. And he goes there to relieve his separation because it's too much to be in Jagannath Puri without Jagannath there. Alalnath, has anyone ever been to this place, Alalnath? Have you seen the Narayan deity? It's actually very, very special because the secret is that everyone thinks this is a Narayan deity, but it's not. Because you think, why would Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's in love with Krishna, or who is experiencing separation from Krishna as Radharani, why would Mahaprabhu go to Alalnath where there's a Narayan deity? It doesn't make sense. But the secret is that this is not Narayan. Because Alalnath and the deity at Alalnath is basically mirroring a pastime that happened in a place near Govardhan named Baita. Once when Krishna was performing the Rasa Leela in the springtime, then what happened is that Krishna disappeared from the Rasa Leela. And as Krishna disappeared from the Rasa Leela, his motivation was that he wanted to simply be with Srimati Radharani. So Krishna left the Rasa Leela arena, and therefore he was hiding, waiting for Srimati Radharani to come. But all the gopis, all of them had gone into separation because their beloved Krishna had left. And therefore they were searching everywhere. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Is he here? Is he there? And so when Krishna, who saw the gopis coming looking for him, when he saw them coming, he thought, oh, I have to do something here. So what Krishna did is he transformed himself into Narayan. And as he appeared out of the bushes as Narayan and all the gopis came, then the gopis said, oh, Om Namo Narayana. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. Very nice to see you. Do you know where Krishna is? And Krishna, disguised as Narayan, said, yes, Krishna, he went that way. And in that way he tricked them and they left. And so then after the gopis had come, then Srimati Radharani came and Krishna thought, okay, I'll play the same trick on her and see how she responds. And so Krishna came out as Narayan. But Srimati Radharani's love is incomparable. Anaya radhito nunam Bhagavan Haririshvara. Sukadev says in Bhagavatam that there was one gopi who worshipped Krishna with an incredible intensity that no one could match. And so when Srimati Radharani came and saw Narayan, in inverted commas, at Baita, then Krishna thought, oh, I'll play a trick on her. And just as he was trying to misdirect the gopis, he thought, yeah, I'll also misdirect her and play a trick on her. But when Krishna looked into the eyes of Srimati Radharani and Radharani looked into Krishna's eyes, then there was such a connection of love, there was such a intensity of devotion, there was such deep separation that he felt emanating from her character, that he could not maintain his form as Narayan, and therefore two hands disappeared and Krishna was exposed beyond his own will. So Alalnath is said to actually be that Narayan. Superficially looks like Narayan, externally looks like Narayan, but actually it's Krishna who is looking to unite again with Srimati Radharani. And so when Mahaprabhu goes to Alalnath, then it's actually that form of Krishna that he's seeing, because he's like Radharani who has lost her Krishna because Jagannath has disappeared, and Krishna is in that way playing tricks, and therefore there's a beautiful interaction at Alalnath. But then Mahaprabhu comes back to Puri when all the Vaishnavas arrive and they do this Veda Kirtan. And the reason I'm telling you this pastime of alalnath is because when we do our spiritual practice or our bhajan with a deep sense of separation, with a deep longing, with a deep desperation, that I'm fallen, I'm far away, Krishna, I really want to be with you, I really want to see you. Krishna, when will that day come when I will be in contact with you again and we will be able to interact in pastimes of love? When that kind of intensity begins to enter our spiritual practice, then our spiritual practices become empowered. The main problem with our spiritual practices right now is that either they're non-existent, or if they are existent, they're very sporadic. But even when they're not sporadic and they're regulated, they lack the emotional involvement. They lack the intensity of focus and meditation. And therefore, when we're hearing about Veda Kirtan, you can deeply read these pages of Chaitanya Charitamrita and understand what it means to absorb yourself in intense devotion. And this is a very beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam, which reminds us of why and how and the fact that we should be very intense. So you can repeat after me. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi divrena bhakti yogena jeta purusham param. In other words, this verse, this is a very beautiful chapter of the second canto. It's entitled Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. And it's explaining how through bhakti, one's heart completely changes and transforms and becomes imbued with love for Krishna. And therefore in this verse, Sukadev says, a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must always, by all means, worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. In the verse translation, Srila Prabhupada doesn't write it, but often when he's speaking in his conversations, he highlights this word, Divrena Bhakti Yogena. Divra means very intense. Spirituality without intensity does not work. Somewhat the problem is, we think our problem is that we have material desires. Everyone has material desires. No, Prabhu, I have so much lust, I have so much envy, I have so much anger. Yeah, join the club. Everyone has it. It's not that I'm special, I'm beyond, I have unspeakable amount of material desires. Everyone else seems like they're doing okay, but it seems not everyone has. So many desires. One Vaishnav poet, he says, if all the oceans in the world were ink and all the skies in the world were reels of paper, it still would not be enough to write down all your material desires. So many desires, yeah. And so many desires, Krishna says, Chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashrita kamopa bhoga parama etavadini nishchita. Krishna says in 16th chapter, Kamopa bhoga parama, because we have so many material desires, therefore chintam aparimeyam cha, we have so many anxieties, isn't it? The person came to Srila Prabhupada and he said, I have so many factories, I have so many people working for me, I have so much money, but still factually I'm so full of anxieties. So Prabhupada said, don't worry, give it to us. You'll be happy, we'll be happy, Krishna will be very happy. So yes, we must learn akama, to become. Who is selfless? This word akama is also very interesting. In the commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, akama doesn't just mean without material desires. Because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, among syllables, I am a. Akarosmi. Akshara akarosmi, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So akama doesn't just mean to be desireless, but it means only to desire for Krishna. But the point I'm making here is that unless there's intensity in our devotional service, there will not really be transformation. And so this intensity and separation of really wanting to be with Krishna is very much depicted in the Veda Kirtan. And so let me ask all of you a question. How would you be able to differentiate between casual devotional service and intense devotional service? How would you be able to spot it? What would be the telltale factors that I'm a casual practitioner or I'm an intense practitioner? Can you give me some ideas? What do you think? How could we differentiate? Yeah.
So an activity that's...
Anything. How would you be able to see in yourself?
Chanting while watching TV.
Okay, so not giving a casual devotional service means divided attention. Intense devotional service means undivided, attentive, focus.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Also emotional involvement. How emotionally you're involved if you're like just doing it mechanically. Or you're doing it like
so casual devotional service means without, almost apathetic, going through the motion. Remember, devotional service is not just an action, but it's attention and intention. Please remember this: action plus attention plus intention equals real devotion. It's not just action, there must be attention and real intention of the heart. And that's often the bit that we miss out on. Yeah, Rasaj.
It's something similar, to be honest, but I'm paraphrasing the class I listened to. He was explaining that it's also a service to be in service. So just being present in that service, you are serving Krishna.
Yeah. Yeah, someone once said that to me, that, they said it's good to be absorbed in service, but did you also know that it's a service to be absorbed? It's a service to be absorbed in Krishna.
Sorry, Maharaj, it's your class.
It was me. I stole it from someone else anyways. I can't claim any rights on it. We are just messengers. Yes. Anything here? Yes. How would you know the difference?
If someone is not prioritizing it.
Right. Are you fitting in your practices or are you prioritizing them? Is it like I do my diary and then I look for a spare slot and I fit in my spiritual practices there? Or is the spiritual practices the first thing in your diary and then everything else works around that? That's a different level of devotion. Often we like our friend Tony Robbins. He used to give this example of a cup. And he used to say, if you want to fill water, sand, small pebbles and a big stone, don't start, for God's sake, with the water. Rather start with the big stone, then put the small stones, then put the sand which will go in the gaps, and then the water will naturally fit in. But if you try to do it the other way around, you're going to end up with a big mess. So what are we prioritizing? What are we putting first? You see, according to spiritual culture, you don't start a day without seeing Krishna. Right? That's why we do, because the idea of early morning sadhana is not just that it's Brahma Muhurta and it's the best time, but what it does is it aligns your vision for the day. You start with the right orientation, you start with the right meditation. You begin by remembering your first identity. See, when you begin your day, the first identity that you interact with is the identity that you generally will carry through the day. So when you wake up, if you're like, oh no, 7:57, I'm late, grab a piece of toast, run out, I got to go to work, I'm going to be late for work. Immediately, the first identity you've identified within that day is, I'm a part of this material world and I have things to do. Now that's true, but that's not your real identity. Your real identity is Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. You are a servant of Krishna. So if in the morning you wake up and you cement yourself in that identity, then what happens is all the other identities that you function with through the day, you see it through that identity. So yes, we must prioritize. Yeah, something else? Yeah.
And some sacrifices being made?
Yeah, casual means that I just do what's easy, what's comfortable, what naturally comes. But in intense devotional service, we're always looking for more. We're always looking to go out of the comfort zone. We're looking to see what more can be done. Yeah. Right, yeah?
You mentioned this, Maharaj, about having goals and trying to have set in terms of like in terms of time and having set goals or intentions so that you push yourself further.
Yeah, so very good. So a classic sign of casual devotional service is that you have no plan, you have no goals, and you have no intention to increase. If you tick the box on all three of those, then know that perhaps we are getting into mechanical or casual devotional service. You see, most people in this movement, I often talk about the 10, 80, 10 rule. 10 are like super struggling. 10 are like thriving. But basically 80% of any given community are basically mediocre and casual and kind of just middle of the road mechanical. And that's where most of us fall and end up. It's not that we're bad, it's not that we're not doing Krishna consciousness, but it's just that it's so casual and just lacks a certain intensity, which means we don't really develop any deep realization or any deep progression. So these are some of the things. Please, please deeply think about this in these days. You see, when you're doing casual devotional service, you look for excuses. Oh yeah, I would really like to do Krishna consciousness, but what can I do? There's this problem, there's that difficulty. See, please think about these things. Because otherwise, Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, Bahu janma kare jadi shravana kirtan tabutana paye Krishna pade prema dhan. Bahu janma, for many lifetimes, kare jadi shravana kirtan, you can do hearing and chanting. I've been doing for 2 years, I've been doing for 5, I've been doing for 30 years, forget that. You can be doing Bahu janma, you can be doing it for lifetimes. That's not a qualification. Tabutana paye Krishna pade prema. You may not get your goal if you do not bring a certain intensity, a certain presence, a certain deep meditation to it. That is very, very important. So in these days that you're here, please for a few moments go away and deeply maybe take a picture of this and ask yourselves, am I on the left, am I on the right? Where is my trajectory going? Because this is real. If we don't move towards intensity of practice, there won't be any movement of the heart. And then we'll ask ourselves, why after so many years in Krishna consciousness, I didn't, everyone is experiencing, I'm not. No, we want everyone to experience, yeah? And just stop here for a second and see, does anyone have any questions or anything you'd like to clarify on this? Yes?
This is not directly related to this, but in the talk, because we are talking about rathayatra, somewhere can you please talk on the glories of Subhadra Maharani as well, because that is something that we hear about Balaram, we hear about Jagannath and Lord.
Subhadra? Yes, okay. I hope I'll have time. Yes, okay, we'll try and fit that in. Anything related to this? Yeah.
No, in developing intensity, is it more internal or can it be developed if, say, if someone takes up responsibility of a service,
yeah,
gives more time, then intensity?
So how do you, what does it actually mean to become more intense? Here are 4 words I'll give you of how you can become more intense in your spiritual life. Quantity, quality, difficulty, responsibility. You can do all of them if you're really Superman or Superwoman. But if not, at least you can do some of these. First thing is quantity. Just increase the amount that you're doing. If you're doing some rounds, have a plan to increase the number, because there's a certain intensity in quantity. One time they asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, do you have any lust? Prabhupada said, no, I have no lust. And then later on Prabhupada paused and he came back to the devotee and he said, actually I have no time for lust. So first thing is, try not to keep gaps. Try to keep engaged, and the more you feel, like the consciousness is, if you think of your consciousness, it's like a pond. And what happens is every time you make a commitment to Krishna, it's like throwing in a stone into that pond. And then what happens is, for the person that makes many, many commitments to Krishna, then that pond becomes filled with these stones of commitment. And then when a stone of material desire comes and it hits the pond, it doesn't rest there, it actually just flies off the other rock. It can't sit there because you've made too many commitments. So what happens is, when this is actually Krishna's trick. Like it's funny when you take a second initiation, it's like first you have to chant 16 rounds, and then you have to stop 3 times in the day, do your Gayatri mantra, and slowly you start thinking, my God, this is like, there's no time to do anything else, it's just like, there's so much to do. So like that, the first thing, if you want to increase your intensity, is increase the quantity. But many times you may come to a point in your spiritual life where you say, but I don't have any more time. I can't actually physically do any more. Krishna, look at my schedule. I promise, there's no more time. And that may be true. That doesn't mean you can't increase your intensity, because what you can do is you can increase the quality. One Kartik, it came to Kartik, and if you don't make a vow during Kartik, you're like an atheist. You have to make a vow in Kartik. So I was thinking, but Krishna, I don't have any more time. Like, Krishna, you see my life, you tell me. And then Krishna inspired me. He said, rather than chanting more rounds, why don't you make a vow that this Kartik, you make a vow to chant all of your 16 rounds in one go, sitting down. So the amazing thing about that vow is it actually ended up taking me less time. But it was a beautiful vow, because it was not a vow of quantity, but it was a vow of quality. So even when you say, I don't have time, then you can, in the service that you're doing, bring an extra intensity through your quality. Then you can also increase your intensity by difficulty, taking on certain difficult things for Krishna. Why does it have to be difficult? See, when you take on something difficult for Krishna, it automatically brings a dependence and a remembrance of Krishna. And that dependence and remembrance of Krishna develops a great connection and conscious remembrance of Krishna. And therefore that's another way to become more intense. And another way is responsibility. Don't just become intense about your spiritual life, but become intense about serving and helping and assisting and supporting and encouraging and empowering other people in their spiritual life. Because when you take responsibility for others, then Krishna says, Priya Krita Ma, you become very dear to me. Krishna's attention is right there. So these are different ways in which you can become intense. So often the mantra I give is, find an intensity that suits your personality so that you can maintain a consistency that awakens your purity. I'm not a rapper, but sometimes you just have these things. Yeah. So everyone will be intense in their own way. Don't try to imitate another's intensity, but find an intensity in your personality. Yes, Jagga.
Maharaj, please say it one more time.
Say it one more time. Okay, can you give me a beatbox? Find an intensity that suits your personality so that you can maintain a consistency that awakens your purity. If you're consistently intense, it's like when a plane is on a runway, it just needs to build momentum. And once it builds momentum, at one point it just takes off. So for most of us, the difficulty is that we're not really building momentum. It's like you come to Lincoln and it's like you get on the runway and you get that initial boost. And then what's going to happen on Monday morning? Bank holiday. That's a dangerous one, you know. After a retreat, after a midnight kirtan, on a Saturday night, and a long day on Sunday, driving all the way back, and then Monday morning, after all of that momentum's been built up at Lincoln, and the alarm clock goes off, you have an opportunity to maintain the momentum or to again slam the foot on the brakes. So we need to develop that momentum, build it, see? Yeah, check that.
One of the other features I personally find in my own life, and when casually these doubts creep in, and they say, wow, why this? Why not something else?
Can you give me a more clear example of one of your doubts?
So you know...
we want to know what's going on in your mind.
I leave my soul open. So why ISKCON? Why not? There are so many other spiritual organizations. I haven't tried though. Why should I follow this path? Or that's one.
Yeah.
That's one of the...
Okay, like why shouldn't we perform something else? Why shouldn't we do something else? Yeah, naturally that is there. You know, our eyes are everywhere. Our eyes are looking everywhere. The reality when we look in our heart is that the real thing is not really why ISKCON or why not another spiritual practice, or why. Because even if we would switch our attention to something else, then we would probably say, like, why not? Maybe I should go back to ISKCON, or maybe I should go back to that. So the real thing actually for us is that the mind, it just always is diverting our attention because it doesn't want to be committed to one thing. And, you know, we tend to have this kind of idea that, first I have to sort out, get everything right externally, and then I can give myself internally. So the idea is that, yeah, there may be but why try something else first you should try what you have properly, and then if it doesn't work, then try something else, right? That's the logical thing to do. But the mind doesn't act logically. It just says, no, maybe you should go there, but I haven't tried this properly. But no, maybe you should try that first. So we should just understand that let us try to give ourselves to one thing properly, and then if it doesn't work, by all means, go somewhere else, do something else. But how you will ever know if you don't give yourself to one thing properly? See, like nowadays what's happened in the world is that people have just become spiritual shoppers. Or should I say spiritual window shoppers. They just we kind of go around everywhere, and we kind of look at everything, and we kind of appreciate everyone, and it's like putting loads of food in your mouth. But at one point you have to close your mouth and you have to start chewing something. Otherwise, what's the point of putting so much food in your mouth? So nowadays people have kind of got into this habit of just putting everything into their mouth, but then they don't close it and chew the thing. And therefore you don't really get any nourishment from anything. And it even happens in ISKCON. We kind of go around, you see, the thing with ISKCON is that there are also many movements within this movement. If you haven't noticed, just give yourself a bit of time. There are many approaches to Krishna consciousness. Which one is right? Is it this one? Is it the Vrindavan mood? Is it the Sankirtan mood? Which is the right mood? Well, the fact is that there are many approaches, but dedicate yourself to whatever resonates with your heart and do it properly. Do it with some depth. Many people will achieve perfection in their own ways. It's not stereotyped. But we must do one thing seriously. Yeah. Yes?
Could you please explain what Prabhupada means by, in terms of devotional service being uninterrupted and, what's the word?
Unmotivated.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about, especially with unmotivated, is it like completely selfless? But yeah, could you please explain?
Okay. So in the Bhagavatam we find this very famous verse. Save pumsham baro dharmo yato bhakti radhoksajay ahaituki pratihata yayatma suprasidati. So this is very, very powerful verse because it's explaining to us atma suprasidati. If you want to actually achieve real satisfaction of the soul, what kind of quality of devotion do you need to imbibe? And the two qualities given are unmotivated and uninterrupted. So uninterrupted, which is your question you're asking about, apratihata, what does that mean? If you look, actually it's very interesting, if you look in folio Veda base and you look at how Srila Prabhupada explains uninterrupted, he generally gives two perspectives to it. He says devotional service is uninterrupted in the sense, number one, that nothing can impede your devotion, right? There's no material situation in which you can say, now I'm blocked from advancing in devotional service. No. The very nature of devotional service is that it's uninterrupted. Nothing can check your opportunity to render service to Krishna. So it's not like, oh, I got exams, I can't do devotional service, or oh, I'm in the prison, I can't do devotional service, or oh, I'm in this relationship crisis, I'm blocked. No. In every single situation, devotional service is uninterrupted because there's always an opportunity. But then Srila Prabhupada, the other interpretation or definition he gives of uninterrupted, he says that the devotee is relentless in their application and their dedication to the path. In other words, like what I was saying before, there are no gaps. You see, in Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is talking about anishtita bhakti, unsteady devotional service. And he gives one characteristic, he says, ghana tarala. Ghana tarala literally means thick and thin. So we are, some days we're thick, not literally like thick. We're thick with enthusiasm, we're like, yeah, let's do it. And then then other days we're a little thin on the ground, we don't really have much motivation in the heart. And so we're going thick and thin, up and down. So uninterrupted means there's a daily application, there's a daily dedication to that. That's really what makes a relationship work, right? It's like, yeah, we were at Jay Shetty Ghanshyam's thing, and there's a show at the London Palladium on love. Yeah, in the middle of the show, he was like, "Can all the single men stand up?" And then I stood up. People were looking at me like it was very strange, it was a bit awkward moment, And then he was coming round and he was like, "Okay, I'm going to pick one of the single men." I was like, "Oh my God, I hope he doesn't pick me." Anyway, in that, but he said many nice things in that show. But one thing he said, chemistry brings people together, but commitment keeps people together. And that's a very nice statement, that even in Krishna consciousness is like there's some sense of chemistry, some kind of attraction which brought you to Krishna. But that chemistry doesn't keep you, because that chemistry is very, very thin on the ground. Like, yeah, sometimes we feel that chemistry and sometimes we don't. But what keeps the relationship is the commitment. So where's your commitment to Krishna? That means a pratihata means that there is a deep commitment. Yeah? The vows of the Goswamis were like lines on a stone. So that means when they made a commitment, there was no going back. I always liked this. Srila Prabhupada, he came to Juhu, he brought Radha Ras Bihari there. And then there were so many problems, and all the devotees were saying, Srila Prabhupada, let's just get out of this place. And Prabhupada, he looked at one devotee in the eyes and he said, I made a promise to Krishna. I promised Krishna that I would build a temple for him here. Therefore, how can I leave? So it was such a simple statement, but it meant when Prabhupada looked at Krishna and made a promise, that was a promise. That was a commitment. And Krishna is a person. And Prabhupada was like, it doesn't matter whether all the external things are, I made a promise and I have to follow it. So that level of apratihata, uninterrupted service, to just again keep applying yourself, that's really what's going to awaken a higher grade of devotion. Does that help?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. What's the time?
8:30.
8:30. And we go till 8:45. 8:45. Okay. Yeah,
Maharaj, one question on this. Sometimes intensity in today's world has a negative connotation. So like there's some intense spiritualists like yourself who are internally intense and who empower others. But then also intensity can come off as a little discouraging sometimes.
Yeah, good point.
So both in terms of being intense and giving to others, as well as how to kind of take that intensity from others in case it sometimes becomes toxic.
Yeah. I once wrote an article and I said, to most, intensity sounds like insanity. But to me, intensity sounds like integrity. Alright, so take this word, intensity. Some people see it as insanity, and some people can see it as integrity. And I'll tell you what I explain what I mean. The reason why, for me, intensity and integrity go hand in hand. Integrity means your acts follow your aspiration or your mind, right? So what you do in your life reflects what you're thinking and what you desire and what you're aiming for. That's integrity. If someone's acts, their mind, body, words are all in line, then that's integrity. So now for a devotee, what is their aspiration? Their aspiration is they want love for Krishna, they want to go back to Godhead. Now that's an aspiration which you haven't achieved for lifetimes. Brahmande Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. Many lifetimes, you were in so many life forms and you never did that. And now in this lifetime you're trying to achieve that which was not achieved in so many lifetimes. In other words, your aspiration is so high. So if your aspiration is so high, then your act should also reflect that high aspiration. If you want to achieve what other people don't achieve, you have to be willing to do what other people wouldn't do. And therefore for me, when I think of intensity, I think of integrity. For me, I think that if you're not intense, then it's a lack of integrity. It means that your acts are not reflecting your high aspiration. Like, yeah, I want to go back home, back to Godhead, and then it's just like super mediocre in what you do. Then there's no integrity. So we're using intensity in that context, that it's not doing something insane, but rather, excuse me, but rather is doing something which is in line with your high aspiration. But remember, therefore I gave you the other mantra, find an intensity that suits your personality. Intensity, when we try to imitate someone else's intensity, oh my God, then it becomes like unbearable. And we think we're failure, we're no good, we just think like Krishna consciousness is not for me, like I could never live like that person. Yeah, there are some like, like I was just speaking yesterday with someone about His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, and I'm just like, don't imitate that kind of intensity. Maharaj just has an incredible level of intensity. Yeah, like who after a stroke, how many years? 15, 14 years ago? Right? Then you just begin to just keep traveling like that. Whenever I'm feeling a little like lethargic or lazy, then I put this video on of Ratha Maharaj. I never give up. Right? And it's like everything he did since his stroke, just continue traveling, continue. But we may not be able to do that. It's like, no, that's beyond. But then we find an intensity that suits our personality, that we can achieve, and then you build it. Right? So build the fire, build it up, like that. I have completely misjudged the time on this presentation, and no, I'm not going to, because then it should be last week and we have other things going on. What was the scheduled time? The scheduled time was 7:30 to 8:45, no?
No.
And what's the time now?
It's
8:37. Okay. So now I'll just quickly go through and then. So now can we begin to see what's happening before Rathayatra takes place? It's not just events. There are deep, deep lessons. If Rathayatra is the event, then all of these things have to happen before that event. But if Rathayatra signifies ecstasy, then before there's ecstasy, there has to be all of these things. Then it said that the day before Rathayatra, the next thing that happens is Gundicha Marjan. Just over 2 miles from Jagannath temple is the Gundicha temple. And this is the place where the Jagannath cart is taken to on procession. And this is where the Rathayatra ends. But it said that before Rathayatra can begin and the cart is received at the Gundicha temple and the Lord goes in to that temple, then first that temple has to be cleaned. So it's very, very clear. Immediately we're beginning to realize, what does this mean? If we want to welcome Krishna into our heart, then first all the unwanted things, all the anarthas, all the upadhis, all those unclean and unhelpful qualities have to be removed. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana Ridyanta stohya bhadrani vidunoti suratsatam. All the unwanted things in the heart by the process of bhajan have to be cleared. And therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes and with all his devotees to the Gundicha temple. The very first thing that Mahaprabhu does when they come to the Gundicha temple is he gives everyone a broom. Everyone gets a broom, and then some people get buckets of water. And that's very, very significant because Mahaprabhu is empowering all of them, equipping all of them to clean. And therefore in our life we can understand, yes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us to clean our heart, and he's given us all the tools, he's given us all the direction, he's given us all the apparatus we require to do that internal work. And not just that, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directs all the devotees. 10 of you go here, 15 of you go here, then you do sweep, then you pour the water over and then sweep it into the gutter, and he explains exactly how to do it. And not just that, the interesting thing is in Gundicha Marjan that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is active. It's not just like tell everyone else what to do and then stand on the side. Of course, that never happens in ISKCON because we do. We're always participating. If you're a leader, you lead from the front. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's active. That's very empowering for us when we hear the pastime of Gundicha Marjan, because sometimes we think, how will I do it? How will I clean my heart? I'm very weak, I'm very unqualified, I'm very fallen. But remember, Krishna is cleaning with you. Krishna is helping you. If Krishna sees that you make an endeavor, then Krishna is also becoming active in that process. Therefore, Rupa Goswami has this beautiful prayer. Na prema shravanadi bhaktirapi va yogo tava vaishnavo Jnanam ka shubha karma va kyataho sajjatirapyasti va Hinarthadika sadhake tvai tathapya chedamula sate He gopi janavallabha Vyathayate ha ha madasheva mam. Rupa Goswami, he looks at the Lord and he says, Na prema, I have no love. Shravanadi bhakti rapiva, I have no taste for hearing and chanting. Yogo, I have no power to do yoga. Jnanam ka, where is my knowledge? I don't even have that much knowledge. Shubha karma va, where is my pious activity? I didn't do so many good things. Kiyadaho sajjati rapyastiva, where was my good birth? It's not that I was associating with such good people my whole life. He says, overall, I look at my heart and I see I don't really have any chance at all. I don't really have any qualification. I don't really seem to have a ray of hope on the horizon. However, hinarthadika sadhake tvaitata. Although I'm so fallen, hey gopi janavallabha, Krishna, the lover of the gopis, you're so kind, you're so merciful, you're so active, you're so supportive, that even though I don't have anything, I know you'll help me. I know that you'll be there, and therefore I have hope. I have an unbreakable hope in my heart that even though I'm so far away, I'll still be able to get close. And so the Lord is showing He's going to help, He's going to participate, but we have to do it together. He becomes active when we become active, and He's there inspiring. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like this, they cleanse the Gundicha temple. The anarthas means what they're doing first is they're taking out all the dirt, the surface dirt, the things that everyone can see. And then later on they're going into the cracks and the corners and they're finding all of those finer pieces of dirt that no one usually sees. And in this way, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur tells us that in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, we're just refining our very gross character. No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication. Previously, in previous times, to have to say those 4 vows out loud would have been embarrassing. Because it's like, my God, like, why do you even have to say that? That's like obvious. You don't do those things. But we know, we make a vow because we've become so rough that we have to make a vow to do these things. But once we've refined our rough character, our gross imperfections, then later on we're looking at the more subtle ones. Yes, the insensitivity within us, the harshness. Yes, that tendency to always look at someone and think of the bad. Yes, we're looking at not just that we got the service done, but how did we get it done? How did everyone feel about that? We're not just thinking about my life, but how am I being encouraging and empowering to others? All these fine ways in which we view life. We're trying to approach life and our interactions in a much more refined way. And so this Gundicha Marjan represents Anartha Nivritti, getting rid of all these things in our heart which block the flow of devotion. And this is also another very, very hope-giving verse from the Bhagavatam as we're trying to get rid of our anarthas. So you can repeat after me. Jata Shraddha Mat Kathashu Nirvina Sarva Karmashu Veda Dukhatmakan Kaman Parityagepya Nishvara Tato Bhaje Tamam Prita Shraddha Drida Nishchaya Jusamanashchatan Kaman Rukadar Kamshcha Garhayan. Put your hand up if you have some faith in Krishna consciousness. Some faith. Everyone, very good. Put your hand up if you know that when you engage in material activities, it brings distress when you try to exploit the world and pursue your material desires. Everyone. Put your hands up if still you're unable to give up those material desires. Everyone. So that's what the first part of the verse is saying. If you've awakened activities, if you've awakened faith, if you know that Krishna consciousness is the way, if you know that material desires ultimately end up in frustration, but still you're unable to give him up, what should you do? Tato bhajeta mam prita. Continue on. Shraddhalur dridhanishchaya. Be determined, be full of faith. Jusamanas chatan kaman. Internally you know that material things will not make you happy, and in time, repenting such activity, eventually you'll be able to give it up. So this is how Krishna tells us to respond in the process of anartha nivritti, when sometimes getting rid of those anarthas is very difficult. Krishna says, this is in Uddhav Gita, Krishna says, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. We cannot clean up our hearts overnight. We're walking, we're standing, sometimes we'll fall, sometimes we'll trip, sometimes, lo and behold, we'll make a mistake. Sometimes we'll feel, I thought I was beyond that, I thought that I would never go back to that, and sometimes we do. And then we can become very discouraged, we can become very despondent. You see, in our life, there is the ideal and there is the real. And the real is below the ideal. And this gap is uncomfortable. This gap creates a lot of guilt. This gap creates a lot of despondency in the heart of a devotee. So how do we respond to this gap? Some people respond to this gap by just moving away from spiritual life and forgetting there is a gap. Their guilt means that they move away from the association because they don't want to be reminded of how much they're falling short. But that's not good, because you can never leave the Krishna consciousness movement. It'll always be there. And you will live a very unhappy life, because in your heart you will know, I have to get there. So that's not an option. So the other option that people sometimes take is, what they do is they bring the ideals down. They say, no, that level of purity, no one's doing it. That's unachievable, that's unattainable, that's unrealistic. And what they do is they bring the ideals of Krishna consciousness down, and they say, it's okay, whatever I'm doing is good. But when you compromise the purity of devotional service, you also compromise the level of experience. And therefore, what we have to do is start making a journey towards the purity. And between the ideal and the real is the achievable. So what we have to do in our life, in the process of anartha nivritti, is, even though we're short of the ideal, just keep looking at what's achievable. What's the next achievable goal that I can try and meet towards the purity that I'm seeking? And when we keep making that kind of journey, progress over perfection. Don't constantly think about perfection, about what the highest standard is. Keep that as your North Star, but focus on progression. Focus on what you can do today, tomorrow, what achievable step you can take towards your cherished goal. And if we do that, then the process of anartha nivritti doesn't become overburdening, and it doesn't become so heavy and depressing that you lose the desire to go on that journey, but it becomes very, very beautiful. And gradually what happens when we engage in anartha nivritti, we don't have this time to do this exercise, but we often do these exercises, And we see how when you see life through a pure heart, then you begin to interact with people, you begin to interact with places, you begin to interact with objects of this world in a completely different place, in a completely different way, In the beginning, what we're often trying to do is enjoy things, enjoy people, enjoy situations. Later on, we're just trying to ignore it. But the devotee with a pure heart knows how in every situation to look at different things in a way in which they engage with it appropriately, in a way that brings them closer to Krishna. And so, later on you can also, when you have time, just look at some of these things and identify certain places or certain people or certain objects or certain situations and ask yourself, am I trying to enjoy it? Am I trying to escape it? Or have I, with a pure heart, developed the vision to be able to see it and interact with it in a mood of service that will take me to Krishna? The reason, again, I'm just repeating why we're doing these exercises is because for us to get there, get to this way of thinking spontaneously, it requires a very, very high level of spiritual practice. And most of us are not there, so it's better that we actually start consciously thinking about how we're interacting with the world. So I'm just conscious of time, so I'm just skipping over. Now all of these things have been done. There's rathayatra, the devotees have come, the devotees have engaged in intense kirtan, they've cleaned the Gundicha temple, so now everything is ready for the rathayatra to take place. And as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and he appears in front of Jagannath, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has all these emotions come out. He said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his dancing is described, how he's jumping high into the air and then he comes crashing down to the ground, and when he hits the ground, it's like an earthquake. He said that when he cries, tears are pouring out of his eyes like a syringe. And when he spins in the kirtan, it's like a firebrand which goes so fast that it just looks like one circle. And in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's a circle of devotees around him because they need to keep the crowds away. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's just this incredible sight. And as he raises his arms and lifts his eyes and his head in Krishna Kirtan, then everyone just also gets into that ecstasy. If you see the video of Srila Prabhupada at Rathayatra in London, it's a very, very beautiful video. And you can see the same thing actually happening to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada just starts dancing all the way on the Rathayatra procession, and every time he raises his hands, and everyone just goes mad. And the policeman is coming to, I think it's Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and he says, tell the Swami just to calm down. As soon as he starts dancing, everyone goes wild. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is just, everyone is just absorbing that ecstasy. You see, it's said that there are two receptacles of bhav. Bhav means spiritual emotion. So it's said that there are two places in which spiritual emotion are overflowing. One place is the dham, and the other place is the bhakta. So that means when you go to the dham, because it's overflowing with bhav, even though you may not be qualified just by being in the vicinity of the receptacle of bhav in the dham, a few drops of that may flow onto you. And therefore some people have amazing experiences in the dham, amazing revelations. I lost my heart in Vrindavan, isn't it? And the other place where bhav is very prominent is in a very advanced devotee. So when you're in their vicinity, even though you may not have any qualification, the ecstasy of that person is pouring onto you, and you feel like, wow, now I get a glimpse of what they're experiencing. So everyone was experiencing. Puri Rathayatra was already ecstatic. But the day and the moment that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came there in the Rathayatra, the ecstasy just went to another level. And therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in this way experiencing very beautiful things. And in that moment, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had the ultimate experience. But it was completely inexplicable to everyone else. Because what basically happened is when Jagannath came out and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Jagannath, he started reciting a verse. But this verse wasn't from the Bhagavatam. It wasn't even from any of the Upanishads or the Puranas. It was a mundane verse of poetry. It was a mundane love line. It was a line that actually came from the Natya Shastras, which is just some drama. And therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started chanting this verse, which was like a mundane love song. So you got to imagine it's London Rathayatra, everyone's there, the ecstasy of the people is rising, and then the most prominent spiritual leader, the sannyasi in saffron robes, is given the mic to begin the kirtan. And as soon as he gets the kirtan, he starts singing a Bollywood song. Be like, oh my God, like call the GBC, like, what's happening here, So everyone was completely baffled because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was singing this song and it just seemed like the poetry of two lovers. In this poem it said that you are, now I'm seeing you after a long time, I have not felt my heart's content. And all this kind of, romantic talk. And no one could understand, what does this mean? But there were only two people that understood what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was experiencing and what he was saying. Those two people were Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seeing something. What he was actually reliving was something which happened many, many thousands of years ago at Kurukshetra. Krishna had left Vrindavan, and the residents of Vrindavan were plunged into great separation and anxiety. So one time Krishna, he decided with all the Dwarka Vasis that they would go to Kurukshetra to do a sacrifice. And at that time in the solar eclipse, they also invited the Brajabasis to come there. And as the Brajabasis came there, the Gopas were there, Krishna's parents were there, the Gopis were there, and Srimati Radharani was also there. And there in Kurukshetra, after many years, the Brajabasis met Krishna again. They said, we were only living by the rope of hope that one day you would come back. And as they saw Krishna, as Srimati Radharani saw Krishna, she went into a complete ecstasy. Because she said, you are the same Krishna, I am the same Srimati Radharani, and we're meeting again after a long time. But I don't see that I can enjoy pastimes of love with you here. Because we are the same people, we have the same relationship, but the environment, the aesthetics of this place do not allow us to exchange freely our sentiments of deep love. Therefore, Krishna, I want you to abandon this royal dress. I want you to abandon this retinue that you've come with. I want you to abandon all this royal regalia, and I want to take you back to Vrindavan. And Krishna was on the chariot. Srimati Radharani wanted to take Krishna back to Vrindavan. And therefore, Rupa Goswami was the only one who could decode it. He could understand, oh, I understand. Jagannath is Krishna in separation from Srimati Radharani. Mahaprabhu is in the Radha Bhav, in separation from Krishna. And now Jagannath Puri has turned into Kurukshetra. What's basically happening is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is reliving that experience that Srimati Radharani had at Kurukshetra. And when Rupa Goswami understood this, then he wrote down this very, very beautiful verse. We can sing it together. Priya soyam Krishna sahachari Kurukshetra militas. Yeah? Priya soyam Krishna Tataham saradha tadidamubhayo sangama sukham. Tatapyanta kelan madhura murali panchama juse. Mano me kalindi pulina vipinaya spihayati. Mano me kalindi pulina vipinaya spihayati. So Rupa Goswami could understand this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressing. He could not find the words. He could not find the words to express the emotion of Srimati Radharani, and therefore he had to take the closest thing he could take, which was a line of poetry from a drama written by Bharat Muni. But then later on Rupa Goswami expressed his sentiments in the words of Srimati Radharani. My dear friend, now I have met my very old friend, my very old and dear friend Krishna on this field of Kurukshetra. I am the same Radharani, and now we are meeting together. It is very pleasant, but still I would like to go to the bank of the Yamuna, beneath the trees of the forest there. I wish to hear the vibration of his sweet flute playing the fifth note within that forest of Vrindavan. So Rupa Goswami wrote this verse, and then he put it in the roof of his hut. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found it. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw it, he said, "Oh my God, how did he understand my mind?" Mahaprabhu came to Rupa Goswami and he slapped him very lovingly. He said, "How did you understand what was going through my mind?" Mahaprabhu went to Swarup Damodar and he said, how was he able to decode what was going on? And Swarup Damodar said, because you empowered him. Because you gave him, you empowered him with that Shakti to write and document such things that he could explain to the world. And so in this way, Rathayatra is actually considered to be the apex of the most ecstatic type of love that occurs in the divine realm. And as we try to awaken that kind of divine love within our heart, we're remembering all these lessons, that first we have to go through these things, and we have to take these things very, very seriously. And we have to try to really work internally. There is so much to experience in Krishna consciousness, but we can only do it if we are very, very conscientious in doing the internal work to improve our sadhu sanga, to improve our bhajan, to improve our the way in which we clean our heart and refine our character. This is all the hard work. This is, a devotee lives in the invisible world. You see, most people will judge you by what you do, but for a devotee, they're spending a lot of time working internally. The tendency is that we don't work on those aspects of our life which people don't immediately see. Right? It's like, if you got holes in your socks, you don't really care unless you're going to the temple, because you have to take your shoes off then. Otherwise, you don't really care. You just realize, no one's going to see it anyway, right? But when you come into the temple, you have to check. That's why I just don't wear socks. So we tend not to spend time in those aspects of life that people don't see. People may not clap for you if you do a lot of internal reflection. The social media may not glorify you if they see that you're doing, working diligently on removing your anarthas. You may not be recognized or acknowledged for many of the internal work that you do, But that's ultimately the substance of our spiritual life, because that's the world we live in. We don't want to just create a life that looks good on the outside, but we want to create a life that feels good on the inside. But for it to feel good on the inside, it has to be a life with Krishna, in communion with Krishna. And for that communion to take place, we have to do these things. And so as we were reflecting a little bit on Rathayatra, next time now, we're coming into Rathayatra season. So many Rathayatras will be there. And every day, and as we approach those festivals, think deeply about what it means. Next Rathayatra, take a moment to just think, what was it like in Jagannath Puri when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in front of Jagannath? What was he feeling? What was he experiencing? And how were all the devotees conducting this festival? And that Rathayatra festival then will become very, very deep, very, very meaningful, and it will move you in a different way. And in this way, we can gain the true benefits of all these spiritual gifts that Srila Prabhupada has given us.